My name is Alan, and I thought I knew my brother. I was wrong. It started on a cold Tuesday morning when Michael called me into Dad's old office. We need to talk about the business, he said, his voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. I walked in expecting our usual discussion about quarterly reports or client meetings. Instead, Michael stood behind Dad's desk like he already owned it, arms crossed, wearing that smirk that used to mean he'd gotten away with something as kids. Alan, I've been thinking, he began, his tone patronizing. Maybe it's time we restructured things around here. I felt my stomach drop. Dad had been gone only 6 months, and already Michael was making moves. What kind of restructuring? I asked carefully. His smirk widened. Well, let's be honest. I've been running the day-to-day operations for years while you've been out playing with construction projects. I think I should have controlling interest. The words hit me like a physical blow. This was my father's construction company. Our company. The business we'd built together from nothing. Michael, Dad left us equal partners for a reason. He laughed coldly. Dad was sentimental. Business isn't. Before I continue this story about justice being served, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you enjoy seeing family betrayal get exposed. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Now back to how my brother tried to steal everything. Michael leaned back in Dad's leather chair, acting like the decision was already made. Look, Alan, you're good with the manual stuff, but I handle the real business. The contracts, the clients, the money. Each word felt like a slap. I'd spent 15 years working alongside Dad, learning every aspect of this company. I'd negotiated some of our biggest deals, managed our most important projects. That's not how the partnership agreement works, I said quietly. Michael's eyes flashed with irritation. The partnership agreement was written when Dad thought you'd actually contribute something meaningful. Face it, little brother, you're the muscle, I'm the brains. I kept my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I think we should review that agreement together. Fine, Michael said, pulling out a folder. Let's look at it right now. But as he opened the papers, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. These weren't the original documents. The letterhead was wrong. The signatures looked off. My brother wasn't just trying to steal the business, he was planning to forge the paperwork to do it. I stared at the fake documents, my mind racing. Michael was watching my face, probably expecting me to cave under pressure like I had when we were kids. But I wasn't a kid anymore. These don't look right, I said carefully, not wanting to tip my hand. Michael shrugged. Dad had them updated before he died. Made everything cleaner. That was a lie. I knew because I'd been with Dad when he'd signed the original partnership papers 5 years ago. Every clause, every percentage, every provision, I'd helped negotiate it all. I'd like to see the originals, I said. These are the originals, Michael insisted, but I caught the slight twitch in his left eye. The same tell he'd had since childhood when he was lying. Michael, I was there when Dad signed the real agreement. This isn't it. His composure slipped for just a moment, but it was enough. You're confused. Grief does that. I stood up slowly. I'm not confused. And I'm not stupid. You've got 48 hours to produce the real partnership agreement, or I'm calling our lawyer. Michael's mask finally dropped completely. You think you can threaten me? I run this company now. You're nothing but Dad's charity case who got lucky. That's when I smiled. Because Michael had just made a crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was unprepared. I walked out of that office knowing war had been declared. But Michael didn't know about the fireproof safe in my home office. The one where I'd kept copies of every important business document for the past 5 years. Including the real partnership agreement. Dad had taught me to always keep backup records. Trust, but verify, he used to say. And always have documentation. That night, I spread everything across my dining table. The original partnership papers, signed and notarized. Email chains showing my involvement in major deals. Project files with my signatures on client contracts. Financial records proving my contributions to company growth. For 3 hours, I organized it all into a timeline that told the true story. Michael thought he could rewrite history, but I had the receipts. My phone buzzed with a text from him, "Sleep on it, Alan. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I almost laughed. He thought intimidation would work. He had no idea I'd been preparing for this possibility since the day Dad got sick. The next morning, I called our family attorney, Patricia Wells. "Patricia, I need to see you today. It's about the partnership agreement." Her voice was immediately concerned. "Alan, what's wrong?" "My brother is trying to forge documents to steal Dad's company." Patricia Wells had been Dad's lawyer for 20 years. She'd helped incorporate the business, handled our biggest contracts, and witnessed the signing of our partnership agreement. When I walked into her office carrying my evidence folder, her expression was grave. "Alan, tell me exactly what happened." I laid out the fake documents Michael had shown me, then placed the real ones beside them. Patricia examined them both carefully, her frown deepening. "These signatures aren't even close," she said, pointing to Michael's forgeries. "And the clauses have been completely changed. In the real agreement, Michael and I were equal partners. 50-50 ownership, equal voting rights, equal profit sharing. In his fake version, he'd given himself 70% control. What he's attempting is fraud," Patricia said bluntly. "Corporate fraud, forgery, and potentially criminal misrepresentation." "What are my options?" I asked. "We file an injunction immediately. Stop him from making any business decisions until this is resolved legally. Then we take him to court." I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I could stop him. Sadness that it had come to this. "Patricia, I want to give him one more chance to back down." She shook her head. "Alan, he's already committed fraud. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a crime." That evening, I called Michael and asked him to meet me at the office. I wanted witnesses for what came next. I arrived early and called 3 of our senior managers, Tom Bradley, our project supervisor, Helen Cross, our office manager, and Jake Torres, our lead foreman. All 3 had worked with Dad for over a decade. "I need you all here for a family meeting," I told them. "There's going to be some changes, and I want everything documented." When Michael arrived and saw the others, his jaw tightened. "This is a private family matter, Alan." "Not anymore," I replied. "You made it a business matter when you decided to forge legal documents." I placed both sets of partnership agreements on the conference table. "Michael, I'm giving you one last chance to explain why you have fake partnership papers." The room went dead silent. Michael's face cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, calculation. "I don't know what you mean." Tom picked up the fake documents, studying them. "Michael, this isn't your father's signature. I've seen it on hundreds of contracts." Helen nodded. "The formatting is wrong too. Our legal documents don't look like this." Michael realized he was trapped. "Fine. You want the truth?" Dad was going senile. He didn't understand modern business. I was protecting the company. That admission sealed his fate. I'd recorded everything on my phone. The next morning, Patricia filed papers with the county courthouse. By noon, Michael received official notice that he was forbidden from making any business decisions, signing any contracts, or accessing company accounts until the matter was resolved in court. He called me screaming, "You can't do this to me. I've run this company for years." "No, Michael. We ran it together. Dad ran it. You just worked here." "I'll fight you on this," he threatened. "I have lawyers too." "Good," I said calmly. "Because mine are better." What Michael didn't realize was that Patricia specialized in partnership disputes and corporate fraud. She'd won dozens of cases exactly like this one. Over the next week, Michael hired 3 different attorneys. The first one quit after reviewing the evidence. The second one told him he had no case. The third one agreed to represent him but warned it was hopeless. Meanwhile, Patricia and I were building an ironclad case. We had the original partnership agreement. We had proof of forgery. We had recorded admissions. We had witness testimony from employees. But the strongest evidence was yet to come. Because when I'd cleaned out Dad's office, I'd found something that would destroy Michael's credibility forever. A letter Dad had written but never sent, dated just 1 month before he died. It was addressed to me, and it revealed the truth about Michael's management of the company. The letter was in Dad's handwriting, sealed in an envelope marked, "For Alan, if anything happens to me." Inside, Dad had documented everything he'd discovered about Michael's behavior in the months before his death. "Son," the letter began, "I'm writing this because I'm worried about what Michael might do after I'm gone. I've found discrepancies in our books. Money moving in ways I didn't authorize. Contracts being altered without my knowledge. I think your brother has been preparing to push you out." Dad went on to describe how he'd started keeping secret records, documenting every instance of Michael's manipulation. He'd found evidence that Michael had been telling clients I was leaving the company. He'd discovered Michael had opened a separate bank account and was diverting funds. Most damaging of all, Dad had caught Michael trying to access our client database to steal contact information. "I wanted to confront him," the letter continued, "but the cancer is moving too fast. I need you to know that you are my true partner in this business. You have my work ethic, my integrity, my vision. Don't let Michael destroy what we built together." At the bottom, Dad had paperclipped a key to a safety deposit box I'd never known about. Inside that box, Patricia and I discovered 3 years' worth of evidence documenting Michael's schemes. The safety deposit box was like a treasure trove of evidence. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers. Copies of contracts Michael had altered. Email printouts revealing his communications with competitors about potentially selling client lists. Photocopies of documents Michael thought he'd destroyed. Dad had been conducting his own investigation for months. The most damning evidence was a series of emails between Michael and a rival construction company. He'd been negotiating to sell our business without Dad's knowledge, planning to squeeze me out and pocket the entire sale price. "Alan, this changes everything," Patricia said as we reviewed the contents. "This isn't just partnership fraud, it's embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and conspiracy to commit theft." I felt sick reading the emails. My own brother had been plotting against our family business for over 2 years. One email chain showed him discussing how to eliminate Alan's involvement and minimize his payout. Another revealed his plan to claim Dad was mentally incompetent to make Michael sole owner. But the worst was an email where he called me a useful idiot who does the grunt work while I run the real business. Dad had highlighted that phrase and written in the margin, "This is what your brother really thinks of you." The court date was set for the following month. I had 4 weeks to prepare for the fight of my life. During those 4 weeks, Michael tried everything to avoid going to court. He offered to compromise by giving me 30% of the business. Then 40%. When I refused, he tried intimidation, threatening to expose financial irregularities in my project management. That backfired when Patricia reminded him that falsely accusing someone of financial crimes was defamation. His lawyers kept requesting delays, hoping I'd give up or run out of money for legal fees. What they didn't know was that Patricia was working partly on contingency. She was so confident in our case that she'd agreed to reduced fees in exchange for a percentage of any monetary damages we might win. Meanwhile, word was spreading through our industry about the dispute. Some clients started asking questions. A few competitors began circling, hoping to pick up our contracts if the business collapsed. I had to work twice as hard to keep projects on track while preparing for court. But every day brought new evidence of Michael's deception. Employees started coming forward with stories of his manipulation. Tom told me about times Michael had claimed credit for my work in client meetings. Helen revealed he'd been intercepting my mail and phone calls. Jake admitted Michael had been spreading rumors that I was planning to leave the company. The day before court, Michael made one final attempt to settle. He called me at home, his voice different than I'd ever heard it, almost desperate. "Alan, we're family. Dad wouldn't want us fighting like this." "Dad also wouldn't want you stealing his company," I replied. "Look, I'll give you 45%. That's more than fair." 50% was the agreement. That's what Dad wanted. "Fine. 50-50, but I maintain operational control." I almost laughed. "Michael, you're not getting control of anything. Tomorrow, a judge is going to see all the evidence of what you've done." Evidence can be interpreted different ways, he said, trying to sound confident. Facts are facts. And the facts show you're a thief and a liar. You'll regret this, Alan. I know things about you that could hurt your reputation. What things? Financial irregularities in your project budgets. I'd been waiting for this threat. You mean the budget variances that you approved? The ones with your signature authorizing the changes? Patricia already has those files. The silence on the other end told me everything. Michael had been so busy plotting that he'd forgotten his own paper trail. See you in court, Michael. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would determine whether justice would prevail or if Michael's manipulation would somehow succeed. The courthouse was intimidating, but Patricia's confidence helped steady my nerves. We arrived early to set up our evidence displays. Charts showing the partnership agreement. Timelines documenting Michael's fraud. Copies of Dad's secret investigation. The safety deposit box contents. Michael arrived with his lawyer, Bradley Penn, a man known for aggressive tactics but questionable ethics. Penn immediately tried to intimidate Patricia, suggesting she was in over her head with such a complex case. Patricia just smiled. Mr. Penn, I've handled 43 partnership fraud cases. I've won 42 of them. When the judge entered, I felt the weight of the moment. Judge Sandra Morrison had a reputation for no-nonsense fairness and zero tolerance for fraud. She'd reviewed our preliminary filings and didn't look happy. Mr. Penn, she began, your client is accused of some serious charges. Forgery, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. These are not civil matters, they border on criminal. Penn tried to downplay the accusations. Your Honor, this is simply a family disagreement over business operations. Judge Morrison held up the forged documents. Mr. Penn, these signatures don't match. Would you like to explain to me how a family disagreement involves document forgery? I watched Michael shift uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't going the way he'd planned. Patricia began our case by displaying the two partnership agreements side by side. The forgery was so obvious that even someone with no legal training could see it. Your Honor, she said, the defendant has attempted to replace a legally binding partnership agreement with fabricated documents that would give him controlling interest in a business he has no right to control. She walked the judge through every discrepancy. The different paper stock. The mismatched letterhead. The obviously forged signatures. The altered clauses that benefited only Michael. Then she presented Dad's original investigation. The deceased father of both parties discovered the defendant's scheme months before his death. He documented extensive evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit theft. Judge Morrison studied each document carefully. When she reached the emails between Michael and the rival company, her expression darkened. Mr. Penn, your client was negotiating to sell a business he didn't own to people who were planning to steal its client base. Penn tried to object. Your Honor, those were preliminary discussions about committing fraud, the judge interrupted, and eliminating his own brother from a business their father built. I felt a surge of vindication watching Michael's composure crumble. For the first time since this started, he looked genuinely afraid. Patricia called her first witness, Tom Bradley, our project supervisor. Tom had worked with Dad for 15 years and had seen the company grow from 5 employees to over 50. Tom, Patricia began, who handled the major client negotiations for Patterson Construction. Mr. Patterson and Alan worked as a team, Tom replied clearly. Michael mainly handled paperwork and scheduling. Did Alan contribute significantly to the company's success? Absolutely. Some of our biggest contracts came from relationships Alan built. The Morrison Shopping Center project, the downtown office complex, the school district renovation, those were all Alan's deals. Penn tried to discredit Tom during cross-examination, suggesting he was biased because he liked me better. Tom's response was perfect. I'm not here because I like Alan. I'm here because Michael has been lying about who really runs this company. Next, Patricia called Helen Cross, our office manager. Helen had processed every contract, every payment, every official document for 12 years. Helen, whose signatures appeared on the most important business documents. Mr. Patterson's and Alan's, she said without hesitation. Michael's signature was mainly on routine approvals and supply orders. Did you ever see Michael negotiating major deals? Never. He'd sometimes sit in on meetings, but Alan always handled the actual negotiations. Penn's cross-examination of Helen was even worse. She had perfect documentation of everything, including the emails Michael thought he'd hidden. When Patricia presented the safety deposit box evidence, the courtroom went silent. Email after email showed Michael's betrayal in his own words. His plan to sell the company. His negotiations with competitors. His scheme to eliminate me from the business. His attempts to manipulate Dad during his illness. Judge Morrison read each email aloud, her voice growing colder with every revelation. Mr. Patterson, she said, looking directly at Michael, you referred to your brother as a useful idiot while plotting to steal his inheritance. Penn jumped up. Your Honor, private emails taken out of context. Judge Morrison held up a printed email chain. Your client wrote, once Dad's gone, I'll have Alan out within 6 months. He's too trusting to see it coming. What context makes that acceptable? Michael tried to speak. Your Honor, I was angry. Mr. Patterson, you will speak only through your attorney. But the damage was done. Michael's own words had destroyed any sympathy the court might have had. Patricia continued presenting evidence. Dad's handwritten letter. The forged partnership agreement. The proof of embezzlement. Each piece built on the others, creating an overwhelming case of fraud and betrayal. By the time she finished, even Penn looked defeated. Your Honor, Patricia concluded, the evidence shows a clear pattern of fraud, forgery, and theft. The defendant has betrayed not only his brother, but also his father's trust and the integrity of the business they built together. Penn's defense was pathetic. He tried to argue that Michael had been the real brain behind the company's success, but couldn't produce any evidence. He claimed the emails were taken out of context, but couldn't explain what context would justify plotting to steal your brother's inheritance. He suggested the forged documents were updated versions of the partnership agreement, but couldn't explain why they weren't properly executed or notarized. His most desperate move was trying to argue that Dad had been mentally incompetent when he'd created his secret investigation. That backfired spectacularly when Patricia produced Dad's medical records showing he'd been mentally sharp until the very end. Your Honor, Penn said in his closing argument, families sometimes have disagreements about business operations. Judge Morrison's response was withering. Mr. Penn, this isn't a disagreement about operations. This is fraud. Your client forged legal documents, embezzled company funds, and conspired to steal a business from its rightful owner. She turned to Michael. Mr. Patterson, do you have anything to say before I render judgment? Michael stood slowly. For a moment, I thought he might actually apologize. Instead, he doubled down. Your Honor, I built that company. I deserve to control it. That was his biggest mistake yet. Judge Morrison's voice was ice-cold when she rendered her verdict. Mr. Michael Patterson, I have rarely seen such a clear-cut case of fraud, forgery, and betrayal of family trust. She held up the forged partnership agreement. This document is a criminal forgery designed to steal your brother's rightful inheritance. You have violated corporate law, partnership law, and potentially criminal statutes. She turned to the evidence table. The emails showing your conspiracy with competitors constitute breach of fiduciary duty and attempted theft of trade secrets. Your embezzlement of company funds is documented and undeniable. Michael's face went white. This was worse than losing the lawsuit. The judge was laying groundwork for criminal charges. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, your attempt to manipulate your dying father and eliminate your brother from the family business shows a level of callousness that is truly shocking. She looked directly at Michael. Mr. Patterson, you will immediately cease all involvement in Patterson Construction. You will return all embezzled funds with interest. You will surrender all company property, access codes, and confidential information. Then came the part I'd been waiting for. The partnership agreement remains in effect as originally written. Alan Patterson is hereby confirmed as equal owner and partner in Patterson Construction, with all rights and privileges thereto. The gavel came down with finality. I had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Word had spread through our industry about the case, and local business media wanted the story. Patricia handled most of the questions, but I made one statement: this was never about money or control. This was about honoring my father's wishes and protecting the business he built with integrity. Michael hurried past the cameras without comment, his face a mask of humiliation and defeat. That evening, Patricia and I met to discuss the implementation of the court order. Michael had 7 days to return all company property and provide a full accounting of any funds he'd diverted. What if he doesn't comply? I asked. Then he goes to jail, Patricia replied simply. Judge Morrison made it clear that any further violation would result in criminal prosecution. Over the next week, Michael slowly returned company equipment, files, and access codes. He avoided me completely, communicating only through lawyers. Some of our employees expressed relief that the uncertainty was over. Others admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to get involved. Tom summed it up best: "Your dad would be proud, Alan. You fought for what was right." But the real victory wasn't the court judgment. It was knowing that Dad's legacy was safe. Rebuilding trust with clients and employees was my biggest challenge. Some customers had been confused by the legal battle and weren't sure who was really in charge. I spent weeks meeting with every major client personally, explaining the situation and reassuring them about our stability. Most were understanding, especially when they learned about Michael's attempted fraud. A few were actually impressed that I'd fought so hard to maintain the company's integrity. "Shows character," one longtime client told me. "Your father always said you were the reliable one." Our employees rallied around the company once they understood what had really happened. Several admitted they'd noticed Michael's manipulative behavior but hadn't felt comfortable speaking up during the family dispute. "We knew you were the one doing the real work," Helen told me. "Michael just took credit for everything." Within 2 months, business was stronger than ever. We landed 3 new major contracts, partly because competitors were impressed by how I'd handled the crisis. Our reputation for integrity had actually been enhanced by the legal battle. But the personal cost was enormous. I'd lost my brother, not just as a business partner, but as family. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss could have. 6 months later, I received an unexpected call. Michael wanted to meet. I almost refused, but curiosity won out. We met at a neutral restaurant across town. He looked older, worn down by the consequences of his choices. "Alan," he began, "I want to apologize." I waited, saying nothing. "I was jealous," he continued. "You were always Dad's favorite. You got along with the clients, understood the technical side, had his respect. I felt like I was just extra." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the forged documents, the embezzled money, the emails calling me an idiot. "Michael, being jealous doesn't justify fraud." "I know," he said quietly. "I destroyed our family over my own insecurities. I can't take it back." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," he replied. "I just wanted you to know that I realize what I did was wrong. And I wanted you to know that Dad was proud of you. He used to brag about you to anyone who would listen." That conversation didn't heal our relationship, but it provided some closure. Michael had finally acknowledged the truth, even if it was too late to matter. As I drove home, I thought about Dad and what he taught me about integrity, perseverance, and standing up for what's right. A year later, Patterson Construction had fully recovered from the legal battle. We'd expanded our team, taken on larger projects, and built stronger client relationships than ever before. I'd promoted Tom to operations manager and Helen to business administrator. Jake Torres had started his own successful subcontracting business and still worked with us regularly. The company Dad built was thriving under the principles he'd taught me. One day, while cleaning out old files, I found a photo of Michael and me as kids, working on a small construction project with Dad in our backyard. We were building a treehouse, all 3 of us covered in sawdust and grinning at the camera. For a moment, I remembered when we were actually brothers, before jealousy and greed destroyed our relationship. I kept the photo, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. Family businesses are built on more than blood relations. They require trust, integrity, and shared values. When those foundations crack, even family ties can't hold them together. Dad's letter had been right. I did have his work ethic, his integrity, and his vision. But most importantly, I'd learned his greatest lesson, that doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, is always worth it. The business he'd started with nothing but determination and honesty would continue that legacy. Today, when I walk through the Patterson construction offices, I see Dad's influence everywhere. His philosophy printed on the walls, build it right the first time. His commitment to treating employees fairly. His insistence on honest dealing with clients. His belief that a handshake should mean as much as a contract. Michael had tried to tear down everything Dad built, but the foundation was too strong. The principles were too deeply rooted in the company culture to be destroyed by one person's greed. I keep Dad's final letter framed in my office, not as a monument to Michael's betrayal, but as a reminder of Dad's trust in me. You have my work ethic, my integrity, my vision, he'd written. Those words guide every decision I make. The legal battle taught me that justice isn't automatic, it requires preparation, courage, and unwavering commitment to truth. Michael had counted on my being too trusting, too passive, too family-oriented to fight back effectively. He'd underestimated the power of documentation, the importance of witnesses, and the strength that comes from being right. But most of all, he'd underestimated the lessons Dad had taught me about never giving up when you're fighting for something that matters. The partnership agreement he'd tried to forge became his downfall, proving that the truth, carefully preserved and properly presented, is more powerful than any deception. I still think about what might have happened if I hadn't been prepared. If I hadn't kept copies of important documents. If Dad hadn't suspected Michael's schemes and created his own investigation. If Patricia hadn't been such a thorough attorney. The outcome could have been very different. Michael's plan had been sophisticated and might have worked against someone less prepared. That's why I now advise other family business owners to always maintain detailed records, keep copies of crucial agreements, and never assume that family loyalty will prevent betrayal. Trust but verify, as Dad used to say. The experience changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more cautious about trusting people completely, even family members. I'm more vigilant about protecting the business's interests. But I'm also more confident in my ability to handle crisis, more appreciative of genuine loyalty, and more committed to the principles that Dad instilled in me. Patterson Construction continues to grow, but success is measured by more than financial performance. We measure it by the integrity of our work, the loyalty of our employees, and the trust of our clients. Those are the metrics that matter most, the ones that would make Dad proud. The courtroom victory was satisfying, but the real triumph is the ongoing success of the business he created and the preservation of the values he cherished. The story of my legal battle with Michael has become something of a legend in our industry. Other business owners use it as a cautionary tale about the importance of proper documentation and family business planning. Patricia has referenced our case in several legal presentations about partnership disputes. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things turned out, if I wish I'd found a way to reconcile with Michael without going to court. The answer is always no. Michael made his choice when he decided to forge documents and steal from the family business. I made mine when I decided to fight for Dad's legacy and the principles he'd taught me. Some battles are worth fighting, regardless of the personal cost. The truth needed to be exposed, not just for my sake, but for the integrity of the business and the protection of our employees and clients. Michael's schemes would have eventually destroyed everything Dad built. By stopping him, I preserved not just my own inheritance, but the livelihoods of dozens of employees and the trust of hundreds of clients. That's what Dad would have wanted. That's what justice required. Today, Patterson Construction stands as proof that integrity, preparation, and persistence can triumph over deception and betrayal. The partnership agreement that Michael tried to forge became the instrument of his defeat and the foundation of our victory. Justice was served, not through revenge, but through truth. 5 years have passed since the court battle that changed everything. Patterson Construction has doubled in size and taken on some of the most prestigious projects in our region. The foundation Dad laid, built on integrity and hard work, proved unshakable. Every morning when I arrive at the office, I see his photograph on the wall next to the framed copy of our partnership agreement, the real one. The agreement that Michael tried to destroy but that ultimately saved the company he tried to steal. I keep it displayed not as a trophy, but as a daily reminder of the principles that guide our business. Employees often ask about the legal battle, especially new hires who hear stories from longtime staff members. I tell them the truth, that family businesses require extra vigilance, that documentation saves companies, and that integrity is worth fighting for regardless of the cost. Patricia still serves as our corporate attorney, and we've become close friends through the experience. She often says our case was one of the most satisfying victories of her career because justice was so clearly served. As for Michael, I heard he moved to another state and works for someone else's construction company now. I don't wish him ill, but I don't regret the outcome either. He made his choices, and the consequences followed naturally. Dad's legacy lives on in every project we complete, every employee we treat fairly, and every client relationship built on trust and honesty. The partnership agreement he created protected everything he valued, and justice, when properly served, protects what matters most.